It's time for some straight talk. The big wireless companies charge a boatload for their superior network coverage. But guess what? Straight Talk uses the same cell towers but charges a lot less. Who knew? Well, now you do. And I do. So let's do something. It's time to switch to Straight Talk. Unlimited plans start as low as $35 a month on America's largest, most dependable networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. A month equals 30 days. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Good Monday morning, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Golic and Wingo. Glad you're starting your weekday with us. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. If only we had some things to talk about today.
Oh, my gosh.
It's just, every once in a while, you see all the stuff in front of you. Like, can we parse this out?
Wouldn't it be great if we could
move this along a
push
little bit?
some things off till Tuesday or Wednesday? Well, suspension will get pushed off. So
Correct.
We'll have some of that to react. Yeah. I thought the same thing. I turned on the mic for first and last this morning, and I went, Tuesday is going to be such a depressing letdown compared to this because we are jam-packed.
Well, we could have the greatest Monday night game of all time. Okay.
Yeah, maybe
we could. It's possible.
I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, isn't it New England and Miami?
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, all right, I got it.
That was cruel and unusual to play with his emotions like that. You saw how excited he got.
You really did. And I'm going to tell you, the most fun thing I saw yesterday, Mike, I heard you disagreeing about this, and I couldn't disagree with you more, of that Buffalo game. That was football weather.
That was awesome.
That was fantastic.
Why does football weather have to be so bad? Like, we sit out here right now. Are you guys excited there's snow on the ground out here?
No, I'm not. But if I was
playing
a game in it, I would have no issue at all.
You were playing a game that you had worked all week to prepare for the way you did, and you worked so hard. These are the things that we're going to try and do and exploit matchup-wise to this team, and you get all out there all of a sudden. Like, maybe it works for us because we were, like, so bad compared to everyone else that it brought everyone down to our level. But if you're the rest of those guys, like, you worked hard for all that, and it's a game that's going to probably come down to a bad snap or a botched special teams play or Adam Vinatieri having his line kick off snow so he can just get a kickoff.
It was awesome. It was fantastic.
And I'm going to tell you the best reason why right now, and I think you would agree, because what is the one thing players, well, I know you and I did, and most players do, what do you dread most after your game the next day? You dread film, right? You dread what film is going to look like. You know what you're not getting after this? You're not getting yelled at.
What?
You're not getting yelled at after this game.
Wow.
That is a big, you can play this game resting with ease, knowing that the next day your stomach doesn't have to churn before you go in, knowing that play in the first quarter, that play in the second quarter, those 3 plays in the third quarter, you don't want them showing up on tape. And now, no big deal. It was in a foot of snow.
Well, not only that, but if there was film, you couldn't see anything anyway.
That's exactly right.
I mean,
exactly right.
It was impossible. Some of the views that you got, especially in the first half, you're like, I can't see anything that's happening out here.
No idea. Am I right, though?
I tell you what, I have never been so completely undone by one point because you're absolutely right.
You go
back there, kick your feet up. All right, so what are we doing for next week, Coach?
Trey,
What's the game plan
I'm
look
telling
like?
you, players during the game, you will have a bad play and you will literally think about, while the game's going on,
right,
you'll think about the next day and when that's going to show up in film. You have no worries like that in that game. It's a beautiful thing.
That's why you saw all the snow angels, everything else. You're right. Everyone's out there like, guys, we get paid and we don't get yelled at. This is awesome.
That's my reason.
Stress-free Monday.
There you go.
Coming for both the Bills and the Colts. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Among the guests coming up, Jeff Saturday will be in here to talk about all the things that went on in the NFL. Michael Kay from the Michael Kay Show will join us at 8 o'clock Eastern to talk about the big trade to get Giancarlo Stanton to go along with Judge and everybody else there. It's just unbelievable. Dan Lebitard will join us on the other end of that at 8:10. I'm sure there's a different reaction down in Miami to this deal. And then Ryan Clark will be here at 9:30 as well. Plus, depending on what side of the state you're on in Pennsylvania, you're either elated or devastated with what happened. But we'll get you caught up on everything right now as we begin.
It's time for Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not, it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, we start off the top with what we were alluding to with the state of Pennsylvania. The Yinzers very happy. Steelers rallied to beat the Ravens 39-38 and clinch the AFC North. Ben Roethlisberger became the first player in NFL history to throw for 500 yards in a game 3 times.
Yeah, he was tied with Drew Brees. They had done it twice. Who thought this game with the Baltimore Ravens was going to be an offensive shootout? Are you kidding me? The Steelers need a last-second field goal to get this win. And I remember when we talked about Ben, the first couple of years in the league, they had a really good running game and an excellent defense. And it was like, okay, Ben, if they throw it 20 to 25 times, you might be in trouble. We want Ben to throw it in the teens. Ben threw it 66 times last night and had 44 receptions. I would say he's grown a long way since those years of where you can count on him now. Incredible. Antonio Brown, 11 catches, 213 yards. Le'Veon Bell, over 100 total yards. I mean, and add Boswell to another one of the Bs, their kicker, who's doing a fantastic job. But what a stunner, this being a shootout. Turned out, unless you're a defensive player, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, another game-winning one for him. As you mentioned, a lot of stress for the defensive players going into film the other day, especially on Baltimore. That had really been the only place for them to hang their hat as a team this season. Maybe that and special teams as well, knowing that's Harbaugh's special. But wow, this Pittsburgh Steelers team, you want to tell you what makes it easier for Ben is having Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell both go for over 100 scrimmage yards for the fourth straight game right now. This is what you always hope for, having this group on the field for extended amounts of time at the same time. And if you can carry that into the postseason, Ryan Shazier replacing him on the field is going to be done, as they said, linebacker by committee. That defense a little weaker because of it. But, man, with that kind of offense, it's going to be really hard for anyone to muster up enough firepower to beat them.
By the way, what a great scene it was. They were FaceTiming Ryan Shazier, and you saw Shazier in the hospital so happy that that was very cool. Again, there was some progress made with Shazier over the week, so that's certainly good news. But when you talk about the killer bees now, you got to put Boswell in.
Yeah, you do.
The kicker. Let's just go through their last few games, okay? Last second field goal to beat the Colts. Then they destroyed the Titans. Last second field goal to beat the Packers. Last second comeback win over the Bengals, and then, of course, a last-second kick once again last night, 39-38. Boswell has become as much of a killer bee as anybody else.
Yes, he has. And the expectation is for New England to win tonight, and then next week in Pittsburgh, 4:25, Patriots at the Steelers.
That's going to be probably for home field advantage throughout the AFC. Really cool stuff. One of a lot of great games coming up next week. We continue.
Off the top.
And the Chargers do it again. The Chargers improved to 7-6 with a 30-13 win over Washington. According to the Elias Sports Bureau, the Chargers became the 7th team in NFL history and the first since the 2006 Titans to move above 500 at any point in the season in which they started 0-4.
Just amazing. Phillip Rivers, 319 yards passing, now has just about 49,500 career passing yards. He passed Warren Moon for 9th on the NFL all-time list. 6 for 6 for 221 yards on a touchdown and a touchdown on passes, traveling at least 15 yards down the field. He's got it going on right now. The defense is playing well. I mean, this is now an amazing setup with them coming against Kansas City next week, who get to win this yesterday. So this division, while we thought we may get 3 out of this division, we're only going to get 1, and it's going to be a fight to the end to get to that 1.
It is. It's amazing. The Chargers outside of the playoff picture currently right now, but a chance to take the division next weekend. Feel better for anyone than Keenan Allen in all of this, a guy who's dealt with so much injury the last couple of seasons and is having an unbelievable year, one on par with what we always thought his skill set was. And we asked this question on Twitter this morning right now based on what we talked about happening with Carson Wentz and the Eagles and the issues that they're going to face there and get into. And the Chargers, which team would you rather be right now? The Eagles or the Chargers?
I think I'd rather be the Eagles because they're in.
I heard that question. Did the Chargers, or were they winning
the
that
Chargers
poll?
were winning going away in that vote.
There's part of me that would, because I was thinking about that, there's part of me that would lean toward the Eagles as well. It's multiple running backs. Get Zach Ertz back. Obviously, you need that. You saw other tight ends step up.
Didn't need him yesterday with the way Trey Burton played.
No,
it was
that's exactly right. The defense, so they certainly gave up some rush yards yesterday. And Nick Foles, oddly enough, I have a little bit of faith in him. Because they're good in a lot of other areas, and they're in. So there is something to that. So I probably would have went the Eagles' way.
They're in an NFC where there's a lot of really good teams, a lot of good to great teams, but there's none that you are as afraid of as I think the New England Patriots strike fear into your hearts in the AFC, and that's the one thing I thought people weren't really counting on that side of the argument.
Yeah. By the way, again, the Chargers are the only team, the 1992 Chargers, to make the playoffs after an 0-4 start, and they've got a huge one again next Sunday as well. They're in Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. So the Week 15, there are really a ton of good games coming up in the NFL.
Off the top.
Well, Cleveland tried. The Browns found yet another way to lose. They blew a 14-point lead in a fourth quarter, by the way, an eventual overtime loss to the Packers. Cleveland has lost each of its last 3 games in which they led by at least 14 points.
The Browns have now become the first team in NFL history to start back-to-back seasons 0-13.
Making history. Making history.
The kind of history, unfortunately, Dad, you and the rest of Cleveland are all too used to making at this point, at least in the current spot with the Browns.
I heard you this morning. You were kind of conflicted, though. You don't want to see, and I'm with you. You don't want to see a team go 0-16. You don't want to see guys out there busting their hump, lose every single game. But there's part of you that if Green Bay keeps winning, you're going to see Aaron Rodgers back on the football field
they
again.
Think he may be back this week.
And aren't we all better off in watching the NFL if Aaron Rodgers is playing football?
Well, I mean, we just talked about maybe losing Carson Wentz for the season now, depending on what happens with him to get back Aaron Rodgers. We saw what he did for football down the stretch of last season,
right.
Maybe the best 8 games we've ever seen out of a quarterback.
And the other thing there, look, Josh Gordon is still very good at football.
Yes, he is.
Right? I mean, how great was – look, whether you think he should be in the league or not is almost irrelevant at this point. He is. He's trying to get his life together, turn it around, and my God, he made some unbelievable plays in that game. But again, Cleveland 0-13 for the second straight year. I wouldn't wish 0-16 on my worst enemy. So Come on, Cleveland, let's get something going before the season is over.
Off the top.
And we finish up with some baseball news. Jack Morris and Alan Trammell elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame, selected by the 16-person Modern Baseball Era Committee that considered 10 candidates whose biggest contributions came from 1970 to 1987.
You know, you look at Alan Trammell, here's that WAR stat that we love, Trey.
Wins above replacement.
Ranks 9th in WAR among those who played at least 40% of their games at shortstop, virtually identical WAR to Hall of Famer Barry Larkin. And then Jack Morris, you wondered, now he does have the highest ERA, right?
Tops
going
Red
in.
Roughing's 3.8. He has a 3.9.
But
ERA.
boy, oh boy, I mean, just some of the outings that he had, especially in the postseason, are just so memorable.
That Game 7 of the 91 World Series.
Yep.
You know,
10 innings shutout to win Game 7. One of the 9 pitchers to throw a shutout in a winner-take-all World Series game, the most recent to do so. His 10-inning pitch were the most in a winner-take-all World Series shutout. All the others were 9 innings. I mean, that was just incredible, so congrats to both of them.
Absolutely. They move into the Hall of Fame, and that was...
Off the top.
And that won't be the only baseball news we'll talk about today.
We
got more coming up on that. Off the top on Golic and Wingo, presented by Upside.com, giving all business travelers the gift of a better travel experience this holiday season. Upside.com. So the upside for the Eagles is that they won the game in a game that very much looked like it could have been... It felt almost like an NFC Championship game, the way it was going back and forth between the Rams and the Eagles. That's the upside, that they are the number 1 seed. They've clinched the division, and they have the potential now to lock down home field advantage going forward throughout the playoffs. However, they may have lost potential MVP Carson Wentz, their quarterback, for the season on that dive into the end zone. He actually stayed in a couple of plays later.
Through the touchdown pass,
the touchdown pass. But
savage.
Boy, you saw that hit, and you just – the way his knee buckled, it didn't look good at the time. They're going to have an MRI today, but the Eagles fear it is a torn left ACL. Sal Palantoni with the very latest.
Well, I saw him come out of the locker room. He got in the chow line by himself. You know, he's a man of the people, that Carson, number 11. Got his food, got on the golf cart, had the big, heavy brace on his left knee, was moving slowly. He'll get an MRI on Monday in Philadelphia and then undergo further diagnosis. I did talk to Doug Peterson. He said he didn't want to conjecture until they got the full report. But the bottom line is this team is ready to put into place a plan to move forward with Nick Foles.
Yeah, well, it looks like that's going to be the case. I mean, we don't have the MRI yet. Well, we've seen things turn around before, but it doesn't look good right now for Carson.
One of the, unfortunately, Mike, as you well know, one of the easier things to diagnose is an ACL. You know, when you see those guys moving the knee around, now not to know a full tear as opposed to how bad it could be as a tear, is it a partial, is it just a strain, which is, by the way, it's a partial tear. It's just a matter of how much. So, but it is one of those that you can tell a decent amount by the test that they perform on the field out there of how lax that can be.
Yeah, it's pretty apparent, and it's one of those you'll hear a lot of people talk about guys who have played without ACLs or have gone through. As we mentioned, he was out there on it after, so clearly whatever he suffered, he's able to stand on it, and you're able to stand on it. It's not debilitating in that way, but you'll see when guys try and move laterally side to side, that's when you hear that buckle come up that people mention with Carson Wentz's knee. So it removes a lot of what makes Carson Wentz great in his game and what he's done so well, and it's just so unfortunate because really a lot of the Eagles' success in the passing game has been off the back of him doing what he did either there or buying time almost in the souped-up Ben Roethlisberger way where he shrugs guys off, he buys time, and he makes plays downfield.
I think you forget how big he is at, 6'4", 6'5", about 240, and what he's able to do. Oh, by the way, with 3 games left, unfortunately, it looks like he's going to miss him. I think that's the direction it's going to go. Yeah, 3 games left and already set the franchise record with 33 touchdown passes.
Absolutely.
4 times this year with 4 touchdown passes. But to your point, Mike, he is the way he moves and escapes. It's not magic-esque like Russell Wilson.
No,
but it's more than like a Ben. He'll shake off like a Ben, but then he'll be effective in running downfield if he has to. Boy, that is when I saw it. I first thought he hurt his hip or his thigh. I thought the one guy went into his right thigh and hip area, and that's what. So when I heard it was a knee or heard him buckle, I thought, oh no, when he
got hit low like that. And I'd ask you guys this because we've all been watching him all season. This felt a bit inevitable to me. How physically he played. I saw him on a goal line play, keep it on a read option play, and thud up, like seeking out contact with the safety. And I thought, man, if you keep majoring in that, this isn't going to go well because that's just not sustainable. I mean, Cam Newton, who I thought was Teflon for a long time, even he eventually succumbed to this. And you just don't want that as the MO, as endearing as it is for your big money star MVP kind of quarterback.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. Jacksonville's signature win, no question about it. This was a statement game for them, and they came out there and took down a team.
Kudos to Blake Bortles. Yes. He played well in this one.
And he's played very well for the last few weeks. But that's not what people are talking about coming down to the end of the game between the Seahawks and the Jaguars. There was a situation late in that game. It was a 6-point game, and the Jaguars were attempting to kneel down and run out the clock. And the Seahawks went full Tampa Bay Bucks under Greg Schiano, like he did against the Giants and Tom Coughlin that year, and were diving for the football, and that led to all kinds of stuff happening on and off the field.
Right. So let me start with this, because, Mike, I know you hate the kneel down when the defense comes to try and get the ball. It happened, I know, the year you guys went to the title, against Michigan State?
Michigan State, Wake Forest, a number of teams, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of teams. And you're not a big fan of that.
Nope.
Okay? Here, I'm going to try, and for the most part, I'm not either. But I'm going to try and rationally make a point for not what Seattle did. Let's get away from the people getting thrown out of the game and all that. Just the idea of trying to force a fumble. This was a one-score game, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, it was 30 to 24. And the previous couple of possessions by the Seahawks, how did they go? One play, I'll tell you, one play and touchdown. When the one thing Jacksonville couldn't do is let the receiver get behind the defense, they did it not once, but twice. So Seattle quickly scored 2 times when you wouldn't think Jacksonville is going to let anybody behind them. Okay? So you're coming off of that. Why is it wrong? Have we ever seen a fumbled snap before? I'll answer again. Yes, we have. So why is it
I think that was really a rhetorical question.
It
just
was.
So you know.
I
don't think you were actually waiting for an answer.
No, I wasn't. So why is it so wrong if an offense is down 21 with 40 seconds to go, they keep hoisting the ball in the air trying to score? What if the defense came up and said, hey, we're taking a knee, guys. Game's over, we're taking a knee. I mean, I heard Rex Ryan on Sunday Countdown talking about this, saying, hey, that's BS, man. We're taking a knee. I don't care if you're taking a knee. You're not dictating to me that the game is over when if I can get that fumble and that ball, I have now shown you on 2 successive possessions that I can score in one play. So just on the idea of going for the snap and on a kneel down, why is that wrong?
In my mind, the kneel down has always been about one thing. It's trying to preserve what we already know. Because at that point, you know the game is out of reach. You know the game is in hand.
But it's not out of reach.
Well, listen, I'm going to say it like this. Is I could run 2 or 3 more plays at you where one of you on the other side has a chance of getting hurt, where any number of things could go wrong. Or we can line up and say, you know what? You had 65 some odd plays before that to go out and try and make a difference and win that game. And you couldn't do it. So you know what? You did real good. You tried real hard. But at the end of the day, it's time for you to get on the bus
BS,
and go
man.
home. I'm trying to make sure that we get out of here without those last 2 plays that are for the most part at that point meaningless, because of your inability to stop the clock or do anything else, to say, all right, we'll try and get out here without doing anything more unnecessary. In a league that's still so strapped with injury, we'll try and get you out with that.
So you tell me the offense is doing it because they have feelings for the defense. We don't want any of you guys to get hurt.
Or our guys. It's not like we care that much about you.
I mean, come on. The offense will throw the ball to the last second, even in a game they're down by 2 or 3 touchdowns. What is that doing?
I'm just saying.
Wait, let me answer the question.
Go ahead and keep asking rhetorical questions.
No, this is a rhetorical question. If you're down 21 with 40 seconds to go and you're lofting up bombs, isn't that the game is basically over? You've lost. Aren't you putting your players at risk for injury? Nonsensically, why should you be doing that? You've already lost the game.
Because they've got control of the ball.
Hold on. It's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Continue.
Thank you.
Because they've got control of the ball.
So
because I understand defense would relish this kind of control, but it's not control that you have. And this is a construct that we have for a reason. People didn't just come up with the idea of the kneel down because it felt fun, because it was something different, because they were bored in meetings.
Why do you get to dictate when the kneel down is?
Because they have the ball.
So that doesn't mean that we on the other side, okay, cool, you guys won, we'll just go ahead, we won't do a thing. For the most part, I agree. They just scored 2 times in 2 plays. What if they luckily get a hand in there and dive in low and get a hand and get the ball and have a chance to score? I can't believe people think that's wrong. So we're just going to fundamentally continue to disagree about that.
I guess what I'm saying, its mere existence is an indication that at some point in time there was an agreement between both sides that this was the international signal for it's over.
No, that's no way.
Then how did
nothing is over until we say it
is?
There's
no way.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
They bombed Pearl Harbor?
Forget it. He's rolling.
Yeah. That wasn't this equal thing. You guys just decided to do it.
But then somewhere along, they wouldn't have done it if the defense had all unanimously said on the other side, you know what, fine ball. We're just going to keep finding ball to the end of the game.
As I said,
at some point, defenses went, you know what, yeah, it's done.
As I said, for the most part, I agree. There's no need to do it. But when a team just scored on one play, got the ball back, scored on one play, why is it so wrong to try and actually get a fumble? Why is it so wrong for them to try and get a fumble when they just scored on one play 2 times?
That's great. Swipe at the ball. You start all this knee divery.
No. Then,
but that's what it all turns into.
No. Okay, it did in this case. I'm just talking about the premise of going for the fumble. Now, going forward, this turned into a joke. I completely agree with that. Then it turned into ridiculousness.
I mean, Greg Schiano sending a whole team full of dudes at a bunch of needs is equally more ridiculous, more dangerous than anything the Seahawks guys did.
Here's the other thing. I don't want to hear real quick. I'm sorry, Trey. I don't want to hear this.
I've enjoyed this.
I don't want to hear this going at the knees stuff. You can tell when a defensive lineman is in the stance where he's going to do it. You know what you have the ability to do? Defend yourself. Because let me ask you a question. When you're on goal line, where are we going as a D-line? What are we doing? We are driving through your knees. So you know we're doing it then, and you don't seem to complain about it. So quit complaining about that and just dive on top of it.
So it's Bush League what the Seahawks did yesterday, but all of that is fine. I'm struggling to see a major difference
what
between the two.
What they did afterward, going for the fumble, I don't think was a problem. What they did afterward was horrible.
And we'll get into that in a minute. By the way, I'm glad you guys could get this off your chest. This is what we're here for you two to vent, so things are better when you're here away from each other. A couple of things. I do find it interesting, your perspective as a D lineman and your perspective as an offensive lineman may be shaping the construct.
There's no sort of personal biases in this at all.
Just a little bit. No. And I know that there are going to be some people out there. What do you mean the Germans didn't bomb Pearl Harbor? Kids. Animal House. Rent it. You'll thank me for it later.
That's exactly right.
It's probably on Netflix
get through
or
to that.
Yes,
to rent it. I'm sure you can find it somewhere.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. Yeah. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Rolling on with Golick and Wingo on a Monday morning. Glad you're here with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Trey Wingo, Mike Golick Jr. here for the first hour today. And, of course, we just had an epic family rant with the two of you about whether or not it's okay to sort of dive for the ball in a one-possession game when the other team is attempting to kneel down.
Right.
However, that sort of led into other things that happened between the Seahawks and the Jags, including Michael Bennett rolling into the center of Jacksonville, not once but twice, and that set off a melee. There were punches. There's going to be all kinds of stuff coming from the end of that game.
Yeah, there is.
And it got out of hand quickly.
That's why I was separating the thought process of the kneel down away from this one, because it got away from people. This turned into emotions of a game, of a hard-fought game that Jacksonville was going to win. And let's be honest, because there's a lot of tweets that says Pete Carroll doesn't have control of his team. Pete Carroll lets his players do their thing. He always has. He's not going to change. That can be good and that can be bad. And this turned into the bad, when you kind of let their guys kind of have their own personality and it's not reined in. You let them be them. You can get something like this in an emotional moment.
Yeah, the term front runner has a really negative connotation, but I don't think you need it for a group that's been champions.
Right.
Like, they can be front runners and still be capable of being champions, but this is a team that sort of self-destructs when they lose. They don't lose often in this way, but when it happens, it usually looks ugly like this.
Well, speaking of ugly, a couple people were tossed from this game, including Seahawks defensive lineman Quentin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And as he was in the process of being removed from being tossed, some things were tossed at him from the stands on more than one occasion, and he almost went into the stands to try and get at some of those people who were throwing things at him, and afterwards he spoke about why.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm a human just like anybody else. Like, I'm a man just like the other man in the stands. And I'm not gonna let somebody disrespect me, throw a beer on me. Like, just because I'm playing football, I'm still a human being. I'm still a man. And so I'm out there playing a game. And at the end of the day, it's a game, and I'm a man. I'm not going to let somebody disrespect me like that.
Going into the stands, do you think that was the right call? Would you still?
I don't know. Was it the right call for him to throw a beer on me?
It absolutely wasn't. I'm just wondering.
If it was the right call for him to throw a beer on me. Just saying.
Neither one of those things were the right call.
No.
Let's be clear about that. But it's look, that came close to being what the Malice at the Palace was a few years ago. What 13 years?
Been
ago?
a while.
Yep. Yeah. That was close, and whoever, if they can find that fan, get him out.
I think they did. I saw security going up into the stands.
Yeah. I mean, get that guy out forever. You should never be able to throw stuff like that on the field.
Yeah, but we know that's kind of an impossible thing to enforce, given the secondary ticket market and all the ways that you can find a way into the game. There's no easy way to police this, and it's one of those things. You bring up Malice in the Palace, is we never want to see that kind of violence, especially with the customer of the game as a league. That's not really what you want. But man, there are times when I would really like a stern reminder that you are not safe to do whatever the hell you think you're entitled to do, just because of this invisible barrier that you put up between yourself and the guys out there, where it feels like, and you saw Jefferson kind of struggling with it, there's a feeling like the crowd has some sort of ownership over what they're allowed to say and do to you, and it's demeaning and it's demoralizing if you're a guy on the field that's trying to cope with that.
Listen, it's very easy to say, and what should have happened, he should have just kept walking into the tunnel even after something was thrown at him. But with listen, I've talked many times how I walked toward our own Eagle fan for something he said about our punt returner, let alone not even get something thrown at when you get emotional. So think about how charged he was.
Right.
again, the smart thing would have been to keep going, but you're emotionally charged, and then so it's wrong for him to go to the stands, and it's unbelievably wrong for fans to throw things. I'm reading tweets, great job by Jacksonville fans sticking up for their plays. That's not sticking up for your play because at the end of the day, they're both wrong, right? So that person should get tossed and whatever can happen to him. I don't know. I agree. I don't think you can kick them out for life. There's too many ways for them to get back in. But how about just a very simple, hey, you want them? Go on down on the stand. Go on down on the field. You two, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we can identify you. Yeah. Come on down here and square up. Let's see how well this goes, because for the point of sticking up for your players, Leonard Fournette stuck up for his teammate. He went over there and he got in the face of the Seahawks D lineman because he was down there and he had to answer for that check himself. He wrote a check that only he was going to have to cash. All of a sudden, you throw that from the stands because you do it thinking you operate under the guise of total safety and total recusal from any sort of response on the part of the player. And that's not defense. That's cowardice.
Sounds horrible to say, but I know you were thinking, and I was thinking it. All right, dude, go on down the field.
Square up.
We'll help you down. There he is. There's the gentleman you threw it at. Yeah, you guys, 1, 2, 3, go.
There's the 300-pound lineman that you suddenly have a major beef with.
Have a ball.
I bet if that happened, it would be that line from Anchorman. I immediately regret it.
That's exactly
These
right.
bears are massive.
I'd like to say I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
The only thing,
I'm sorry. Very sorry. Very sorry. I didn't mean to. Thank you very much.
Now, the only thing the NFL can control, obviously, is Jefferson, and he's going to. They're going to nail him hard.
Absolutely.
And I get it. As emotionally charged as you are, and there were plenty of people trying to get him into the tunnel, and he was pulling away from them, trying to get up the wall there. So they're gonna come down hard on him, and they should. I mean, that's just something you can't even get in the area of messing with, of going toward the stands.
You know, it's interesting too, because lost in all of this was, again, a statement win for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Absolutely right.
They gave up a couple of big plays late because Russell Wilson did Russell Wilson things, but look at Blake Bortles. Okay, This is 2 straight games now that he's thrown multiple touchdown passes and no interceptions, and he's completed 74 and 66% of his throws. Are we suddenly thinking that he might be a viable option for them going forward in the playoffs?
I'm still not that far.
Right? It's just curious. It's interesting.
I know. I get it. I'm still not there on the consistency level for the defense they have and the running game that they have that they can rely enough on that passing game. That said, I've been one that said I don't think he'll be the quarterback there next year, but I also want to be the one that says, hey, good job in the last couple of games for what he's done. But I don't consistently, for me, no.
Yeah, you know he's not the reason they're out there winning games, and so, but he's playing for his job next year. I mean, I think he understands that as well as anyone. Quick, just because I know the Martellus Bennett thing is probably going to warrant, you mentioned fines and suspensions. You think they can get away with suspending him more than one game after what they gave to Gronk?
Oh, you mean Michael Bennett?
Michael Bennett, excuse me, yeah.
Well, we'll find out that there's been very little consistency in terms of how it works, because there's going to be something there, too, I'm sure.
You're just asking for more problems if you give him any more than one game.
It's again, that's the thing they got to talk about. We're going to have a new category next year, whether it's a suspension with an intent to injure.
Right, right.
You know, whether it was the Mike Evans play or the Gronk play or what we saw from Bennett.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big, giant Jell-O mold. It's very interesting where that went.
Michael Kay, host of the Michael Kay Show on ESPN New York 98.7 FM, joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. Of course, Michael also calls the Yankees games. So, Michael, what was your initial reaction when you realized you're going to get a lineup that includes Aaron Judge and now Giancarlo Stanton?
Well, I was just excited because I figured you guys would have me on today, and then I could be the first one to wish Golic a happy birthday for tomorrow. So that was my thinking.
Oh, you're a good man, Michael. I appreciate that very much.
Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very fun lineup, and it's going to be tough for pitchers to pitch to. So, my home run call is Sia, so that's going to be sickening for a lot of people because there might be 250 of them this year.
And listen, you have this to talk about. I don't have to talk about the Giants and Jets anymore for a while, thank God, with what's going on there with them. When Derek went to the Marlins, did almost every baseball, if not even layperson, know that they were probably going to trade Stanton because they just had to restart with the money situation?
Well, I mean, their situation financially is so dire. This team is going to be stripped down to nothing. I think most people knew that because they were losing so much money, and that wasn't, bookkeeping. That was real money that they were losing, and, they spent $1.2 billion to buy the team. So something had to give, and you figured that Stanton would be the first one to go, but instead it was D. Gordon, then it was Stanton. I wouldn't be surprised if they turn around and they trade Castro. Because he's owed $22 million over the next 2 years as well. They need to just break it down to almost nothing And I know he's going to be the bad guy in South Florida, but somebody has to do it because this is not a sustaining organization paying that kind of money. They just don't draw that sort of crowd, and they don't have the television revenue coming in the way other local markets do. So this is what they had to do, and Derek's going to take the hit for it.
Well, he certainly is. And look, a lot of people are wondering, because the whole thing, Michael, was a little weird. Like, baseball helped him sort of get involved there, and of all places, it goes back to the Yankees. I'm sure this is going to be the biggest PR hit maybe he's ever had, because he never had anything like this in his playing career.
No, it was all positive as a playing career, and now he's in a situation where his desire to win is not the only thing. I mean, this is a business as well. I almost think it's laughable, though, that people think, he's doing this to help the Yankees. They had a trade first with the Giants and the Cardinals, and Stanton turned it down. The previous ownership not only gave him a $325 million contract, they gave him an absolute no-trade clause. So when he said either the Astros, the Dodgers, or the Yankees, they had to trade it to one of them, and the Yankees actually put the best deal together, which was not a great deal for a guy who won an MVP. So I don't think that Derek is trying to help the Yankees win. He's trying to get out from under it with the Marlins, and again, he's going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, that is the one thing we're to remember, that Stanton did have the choice with the no trade. We're talking to Michael Kay of ESPN New York 98.7. As far as the team, Trey and I were actually talking about last year with the Yankees. Right. They almost feel, which is weird to say for the Yankees, kind of the feel-good story. This young players on the team. Aaron Judge, everybody loved this guy. They weren't supposed to really be there last year. Then they knock off my Indians, which is the favorite, and they make the move that they made to almost making it to the World Series. They're like, oh, kind of a feel-good story. Are they back to the evil empire-hated team? Not because Stanton's a bad guy, but because here they are loading up with all the talent again?
Right on the nose, Mike. I mean, exactly what happened. They were the baby bombers. They were the little engine that could, and now that's not the case. So they are the evil empire again. Because when you look at this deal, did they really need him to compete this year? The answer is no. But you'd be foolish not to make a trade like this because he's such a great player, and they gave up so little, and they have somebody that can slide in and play second base for Castro. And the objective to get under the $197 million threshold, it's still there, and they will get under the 197. They still have enough money to get one more starter, and that completes the team. So, yeah, now they will be looked at this behemoth where they're a team that everybody can root against. And last year, you talked to a lot of people that were historically not Yankee fans, and they go, wow, it's tough not to root for this team. Now people will start to root against them, and they will be the hunted rather than the hunter they were last year.
Well, look, they're used to this. This is sort of modus operandi from how they were winning all those World Series from 96 through 2009. So, I mean, this is sort of the way it was always perceived with the Yankees, Michael, which made last year really so refreshing in a way. But it seems like we're back to that. Behemoth might be the best, or monolith maybe. This just monster that's just going to go out there and, like Drogon in Game of Thrones, just breathe fire on everybody.
Well, it's interesting. The organization has always been this, Trey. But a lot of the kids that were on the team last year that made it so fun, this is going to be new to them. They did not come into cities where they were reviled. They did not get booed all the time. People actually did like them. It's going to be interesting to see. How does a Judge handle it? How does a Bird handle it? Severino, Sanchez, those guys were never the bad guys. And now they are going to be the bad guys in this situation because of the addition of Stanton. Can they handle it? They probably can handle it, but it's going to be new to them, that's for sure.
So let's keep having fun and go 3 years down the road. Who's going to be the star of this team, Judge, Stanton, or somebody else? And by somebody else, we mean Bryce Harper.
You know what? That's the one thing that, when you look at this deal and you break it down and you try to see the pros and the cons, Bryce Harper's probably going to get $40 to $45 million a year. So is Machado. And although this deal will look suffocating when you do it right now, next year at the end of 2018, it might not look that bad because it looks like a bargain if he continues to put up those numbers because I think the market's going to continue to go up. I think this probably eliminates them out of the Harper deal. Yes, they want to get under the threshold this year, but Hal Steinbrenner said on my show last week, he said, I truly believe that you can win a championship under $200 million a year. So even if they get under 197 this year, adding Harper would not make them 200. It would make them 245. So I'd be very surprised unless they do some trading of high salary players that if they'd add another big bat like that. And if you're going to choose, of all the people that are available next year, the guy that would probably be more desirable for you would be Manny Machado to come in and play third base because Headley's contract would be over.
Michael Kay with us on Golic and Wingo. Of course, he has the Michael Kay Show on ESPN New York, 98.7 FM, and also calls the Yankees games. So this lineup, we know it's going to be stacked, okay? Again, these four, Didi, Sanchez, Judge, and Giancarlo, I think I hit 169 homers last year. The entire Red Sox lineup hit 168. So where's the flaw right now in this Yankees team as it's being built? Where do you see one thing that may slip them up? Because now everybody is basically going to assume they're just going to beat their way into the World Series.
Well, in the lineup, Trey, I don't see any kind of negative. I mean, really, Headley's probably going to bat ninth, and Didi Gregorius, who batted fourth last year, probably going to bat seventh. So I don't know if there's a real landing spot for any pitcher. If you want me to say, what you would be most concerned about as you're putting the Yankees together, maybe their starting pitching, which I think is pretty darn good. But you are asking me for one negative. That would be the negative. Do they have a guy who's going to be a number one starter? Is Severino going to be able to repeat what he did last year? Is Sonny Gray going to be better in a full season with the Yankees than he was last year? Are they going to bring back CC Sabathia? Those are the questions right now. I think they're in good shape in terms of that, because when you look at this lineup, they are not going to have to pitch a lot of shutouts to win. The other negative, I would say, and I think you see this a lot in the playoffs, guys, there's a lot of home runs in that lineup and a lot of strikeouts. Yep. And usually when you survive on home runs, and you can really hit a lot of them against the underbelly of pitching in Major League Baseball during the regular season, in the postseason, those home runs don't come as easily, and also you get a lot of strikeouts. So how will they create runs? That would be it. And again, it's nitpicking, but this is not a team that's going to create runs. They're going to bludgeon opponents.
So the man that gets to put this lineup together, Aaron Boone, the new manager of the Yankees, obviously the family history in the league is, everybody knows about it, but it's his first time managing. What are the biggest hurdles for him as a first-time manager in New York with the Yankees that he's going to have to deal with?
I think the whole thing is going to be new and different for him. If you're going to bet on a guy, you bet on a guy like Aaron Boone because he's smart and he's a good communicator. But how is he going to react in the seventh or eighth inning when he has to make a decision, who to do in the bullpen, who not to go in the bullpen? So I think that's going to be the key. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles it. And I said this when they signed him. I believe this guy can be a really good manager. None of us could swear to it. You look at the things that he brings to the party, and he certainly has all of them. But this guy just got his driver's license, and now you're tossing the keys to a Lamborghini, which just got stronger and faster with the addition of Stanton. So I think the hardest thing now, Mike, will be he has a pressure to win. This team was not built to get to the playoffs. This team is now built to win the World Series, a lot different than last year's team.
Absolutely. Yep. Expectations are going to be through the roof, and we'll look forward to a lot of see-yas this year, Michael, on the Yankee games. Mike, we appreciate you being with us. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Anytime, guys. Thank you so much.
Michael Kay, host of the Michael Kay Show on ESPN New York 98.7 from 3 to 7 in the afternoon, and, of course, calls the Yankee game. So
see ya.
There's
going to be a lot of
those.
Yes,
a
will.
lot of those.
Yep.
And maybe some of those strikeouts that we saw from Aaron Judge won't be there anymore because there's going to be a lot of protection around him in that lineup. Not everyone has to swing for the fences on every swing.
But that seems to be where we are now. Knock it out of the park or strike out. And you know what? Everybody seems to be fine living with it, especially when you're knocking out 50-plus home runs. You're okay with that.
You're exactly right. So obviously they're giddy in New York. I'm assuming it's the exact opposite feeling in South Beach. And Dan Le Batard of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stu Gatz now joins us here on Golic and Wingo. And Dan, listen, this has got to feel like lather, rinse, repeat for anybody that's been with the Marlins since 1997 or so.
Well, it's offensive. The way they run this business is, and that baseball's allowed it, that baseball's allowed all of this, that they gifted a franchise to Jeter, that Jeter overspent on the franchise, that the franchise was so misrun that it had a lot of debt. All of this was supposed to stop. They told us when the stadium got built, they told us that this was going to stop. And now the most unpopular owner in the history of South Florida sports has got people even more agitated than they were before, because the betrayals never stopped down here. Like, it's a foolproof business that baseball got. It's like a racket. It's a racket. They gave Jeter a team, even though he didn't have the money for a team. Jeter's paying himself $5 million a year. That's as much as Cashman now makes. And his first move is to just get rid of the bad business decision he already made by buying all of this debt, by just getting rid of all of their good players. And while I understand the need to get rid of that contract. They promised us when the stadium was built in our broke-ass city, they promised us that this stuff was going to stop. And right now, it's worse than it's ever been.
So, and I completely agree with you. So let's just start with the Jeter getting the team. Was there, I guess it couldn't have been a shock knowing the situation the team was in. Are you still surprised that he did all the wheeling and dealing and dumping the money that he's done, or was that expected given the team he took over?
Well, no, he announced it. It wasn't expected because we were told this would stop, not that it would be worse than it's ever been. They can't afford anything. Jeter's coming out here with his hand out. Like, Jeter has this name, and baseball gave him a gift because they want his name around this team. And the other buyer, a Cuban guy from Miami, planned to have a payroll. He planned to spend, and baseball gave it to this guy. And Jeter overspent $1.1 billion for a franchise in South Florida that nobody cares about. Like, they paid $1.1 billion because baseball's running a racket. I'm telling you, they gifted this to Derek Jeter in a way that should be bothersome to anybody who cares about competitive sports.
Dan Le Batard with us from the Dan Le Batard Show. Stu Gott's coming up after we're done here on Golic and Wingo. Dan, I think you just hit on it. You said it was a team that no one cares about, and now they're going to care about it even less with this trade. I mean, how do they try and find any sort of excitement about this franchise being there at this point?
Well, but Trey, the reason they don't care, like the reason that you've gotten to a place that's even worse than anger, where it's sort of indifference, it's the worst place a fan base can reside.
Right.
It's the worst place a business can reside, where you've just gotten to a sort of numb indifference because of the number of betrayals like this. This is such a weird thing to have champions, multiple champions stripped down, to have the MVP of the league and to say, in his prime, and to say, when do you ever see the MVP of the league in his prime? Sorry, can't do it. The Marlins, guys, listen to what I'm saying here. The Marlins have had two of the worst trades in the history of baseball, right up there with Ruth. They traded Miguel Cabrera, and now they've traded the replacement for Miguel Cabrera, the guy who became Miguel Cabrera. So no franchise in the history of sports has done that. Like, that's never happened before, where you have these – you trade Ruth once, and it stays with you for 100 years. They've traded Ruth twice in the last 15.
So I guess in totality here, not to make it all sound even worse, but the trades that go on there, you had obviously LeBron down there winning a couple championships, and that's all gone. The Dolphins aren't relevant at this point, even though they were in the playoffs last year. I mean, as far as really challenging for something, what is the South Beach sports fan? What are they looking to? What are they looking for? What can get them up to a positive note, if anything?
Drugs.
That may be an honest assessment.
I mean, seriously, I mean, fans are buying tickets there for either the Dolphins or Miami or for the Marlins. I mean, is there? Do you see 5 years from now?
Painkillers, Oxycontin.
5 years from now,
something with a numbing effect, I think, is what we're going for.
So
here.
We're all numb now. 5 years from now, do you think there'll be anything to look forward to?
They should have. They should have like an anesthesia night at the ballpark. They would get a crowd if they were to do that. You could come in and
Pink Floyd playing in the background, so we're all just comfortably numb. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like the ushers would say, "Look, the betrayal. You won't even feel it. It won't even hurt. The betrayal. You won't even feel it."
One night and everything will be fine.
Oh man.
Well, it does bring a bigger look. Obviously, it stinks in Florida. But in a bigger picture, what do you think this is for baseball? Because there will some that will say, look, hey, the Yankees are a brand. The Yankees are the most popular brand. And having that team once again, a lineup like this is good for the game. What do you say?
Yeah, of course it's good for the game. Yes, it's good for baseball to have these two giants in that media market with the most famous uniform in sports. Those pinstripes still matter. Like, of course, it's good for the sport and it's good for the national sport, but like it should be sort of. It feels like Wall Street fraud that the former Yankee, the famous former Yankee, and some people who are listening to this are going to say, "Well, they tried to trade him to St. Louis first. They tried to trade him to the Giants." No, he told them from the beginning he wasn't going there. He told them New York or Los Angeles is where you need to send me. The problem is that they didn't have to trade him. They think they have to trade him. They didn't have to trade him. They traded him. But we're in a place where you've got Derek Jeter, former famous Yankee, aiding his former team in a way that makes him, Mr. December. And I'm telling you, what happened here with South Florida, we all in South Florida should have gotten one of those famous Jeter gift baskets Sunday morning after the way that played out.
All right, Dan. On a lighter note, just to leave you maybe with a smile, I
agree.
The
prospects aren't any good.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
Baker Mayfield, as we thought he would, winning the Heisman Trophy over the weekend. Congratulations to him.
I thought he did a nice job, too, up there. I thought Billy Sims, maybe a little too much with the boomer, yelling in the back there.
It happens.
Might have been a little...
what is he, the 6th Oklahoma? I think
6th, yes.
Wow, good for them. Congratulations.
Go behind Notre Dame. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
No, it was a thought bubble.
Did I say that out loud?
It just popped out.
I'm sorry about that.
No, don't be.
But, hey, he did not get the highest percentage. That's still, again, I think, was it 91.6?
Troy Smith, yeah.
Troy Smith, he got, I think, 86% of the vote. Deserved to win it. Everybody thought he was going to win it. I thought did a nice job with his acceptance speech as he gets ready for the playoffs. So, and then beyond, which the playoffs I think are going to be a ball to watch. And then, boy, oh boy, the ranking and the things that are done for players who the only thing they'll do after the bowl games is put on shorts and a T-shirt.
Yep.
But boy, oh boy, how they will be picked and prodded and evaluated.
Oh, listen, it's crazy. Golic and Wingo presented by 30 for 30 Podcasts. Subscribe right now to 30 for 30 Podcasts in the Listen tab of the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Delta, making your travel experience informed, connected, and seamless. Keep climbing. I've always said this, Mike. There should be 2 drafts. One right now or after the bowl game. However you want to do it. Right now after all the bowl games are over. And then one in April when it actually happens. And see how incredibly different those 2 drafts are going to be.
Could not agree more. My wife was just talking to me yesterday. She says, you guys should write down any analyst that comes on, any quarterback, talking about quarterbacks, and what they say right now when the season is over, and then what they say in early April, and if it changes. Because what's going to change outside of, all the stuff at the combine, there are some things I can see. If you get a guy up to a whiteboard, how does he diagram it? What does he do when you're looking at film with him? I can understand some of that. But, man, to me, the best evaluation, it is nice to talk to a person. I understand that. But the best evaluation just happened.
Yeah.
Just happened.
It was the film.
And it's still going to happen in the bowl games and certainly the playoffs. But that's the best evaluation of a player you can get.
Well, listen, there's going to be a lot of evaluation on Baker Mayfield because of the amazing run he had. And, look, he's been great for a couple of years at Oklahoma.
Yes, he has. Absolutely.
Let's be clear about that. But, there's a lot that goes with this guy. And our insider on the NFL, Adam Schefter, made a guarantee regarding Baker Mayfield yesterday.
I saw Todd McShay had him ranked as the 27th rated prospect. I will guarantee you right now, Baker Mayfield is going in the first round of the draft, and I will bet you he goes higher than people think. They love his competitive spirit. They love all the skills that he brings, the flexibility that he provides. He's drawing comparisons to Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, same stature, not real big. But what's interesting to me, and here's what's always funny, I've had at least 3 teams say to me, the quarterback we really love is Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
And when I start hearing that,
with Rosen and the idea of Darnold there.
I was telling you, when I start hearing that, that tells me that guy is going to go higher than people expect.
Yeah, and again, people understand this is not him with a hot take.
Right.
This is not him guessing. This is what Adam is hearing from people that he's talking to, and it sets up for a fascinating quarterback draft. I mean, you have Darnold, you have the Joshes, Rosen, and Allen. Mm-hmm. You also have Mason Rudolph out of Oklahoma State, who's got the frame.
Right.
Lamar Jackson. I mean, there are all kinds of quarterbacks in this draft, and now you throw Baker Mayfield in the mix, it could be one of the most fascinating first rounds we've seen in quite a while.
I'll be interested when the grades come out. More now what the grades are going to be. And by the way, another congrats to Baker Mayfield. Riley is confirming it all for me. The first walk-on, I believe, to win a Heisman. He walked on. He walked on twice. Walked on at Texas Tech and then walked on at Oklahoma as well. So really, again, kudos to him and what he has done. And I think one of the reasons, because we sit there and talk about his side, the other guys we're talking about that you mentioned, Rudolph, Allen, Rose, and Darnold, these are all like more the prototypical 6'4", 6'5", anywhere from 220 to 240.
The Carson Wentz body.
Type
basically.
of a guy. Baker Mayfield's, I think, listed at 6'1", which we'll see is even 6'1" when you get to the combine, and 220. He's a solid kid, that's for sure. But one of the things we're seeing now, and I think it's the right way to go, while we're not turning it into college football in the pros, what you do, and I think it's the right thing to do, is you take what they do best. It would seem to be, instead of saying, okay, we kind of like what we see out of you in college, we envision you in the NFL, now go into our system and fit our system.
Right.
Is you have to kind of let them morph into what they're going to be while making them an NFL quarterback. And still, for the most part, there are a few exceptions, certainly why am I drawing a blank on Seattle? And
Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, where you're running around like crazy
because
making things happen.
Yeah.
But remember a couple of years ago when Cam Newton won the MVP, we talked about he and Russell Wilson, how they both improved in the pocket. You still have to be able to fire the ball from the pocket to win in the NFL. But teams are taking advantage of the athletic ability of quarterbacks. And Baker Mayfield can make stuff happen. And normally you would say, listen, if you're making it up on the run, you're not going to make it in the NFL.
Right.
You're just not going. You can't just kind of draw it up. You know, you run to the parked car, you run to the fire hydrant.
Make a left at the bus stop.
I'm going to spin out of this thing, and then we're all going to converge here. While it can work occasionally, you can't make a living off of it. But you can use these quarterback strengths, and that's one of Baker's strengths, to get him out of the pocket, to get him on the move. He is dangerous out there. So I do think that's becoming more and more in vogue, and I do think it's the right way to go. Use their talents to their best capable abilities at the next level. So I could see that out of Mayfield. Listen, players love him. I mean, he seems to be an
those two linemen, when he missed 2 plays, brought out his jersey for that one game.
Here's the thing: you want me to sit there and say because the people in Kansas wouldn't shake his hands and he grabbed his crotch that I'm going to say, oh my God? No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not. I don't care about that. That doesn't bug me one bit. You can rip me all you want for that. That's fine. That is not going to go, well, I can't believe he did that. I'm not going to pick him. No, that's not going to happen. I'm looking at what he does on the field. Now, if he has off-the-field issues, that's something that you have to look into certainly as well. But that's not one of the on-field things I'm looking at and saying I'm going to downgrade and that's going to cost him some spots. Not in my book. So he has really done well for himself, and I think it will be a real because Marcus Mariota kind of, but he was bigger.
Yeah.
He still had a little more size to him, and you see they're really now. He's not having a great year this year.
No, he's not
at all. But we saw what he can do, and they've really helped use his athletic abilities to his benefit, or they had early on in his career. We'll see where it goes from there, and I could see the same thing happening with Baker Mayfield.
Well, the interesting thing with Mayfield is obviously he has that. He has that undeniable competitive spirit, and the results have been there. The questions about his size, I think, are legitimate when you look at the speed along with the size, because the one thing about Russell is he's pretty fast.
Yes,
Russell
he
Wilson.
is.
And I'm not sure Baker is running the same 40 time as Russell. And
right.
While you normally say with a quarterback that's not that big of a deal, but with the way Baker plays and the way Russell plays, that becomes a bigger deal.
You don't want them taking hits at all.
That becomes a bigger deal. And look, whether it's right or wrong, people are going to say, I see a little bit of what Johnny Manziel did.
They are.
In Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
And the question then becomes, can Baker avoid the traps that Johnny Manziel fell into? Because they both sort of like make it up as you go along kind of deal, that all wild-eyed, crazy, all that kind of stuff. There is a little bit of that. And when you saw what happened with Manziel,
right.
There's going to be a really tough evaluation, I think, of Baker Mayfield along those lines. But if you're going by his production on the field and what he can bring, I think what Adam is hearing is actually very accurate. I mean, this draft is going to be it's going to be phenomenal in terms of the interest from the quarterback's perspective. But I do wonder, because I've said this a bunch, running quarterbacks are like dogs that chase cars and long putts for pars. They don't last.
They don't last.
Unless you're Cam Newton, who is 6'5" and 250
right. So he'll last a little longer, than most. So we'll see. The best thrower in my book out of the group, throwing the ball, and there's some good throwers in this, is Josh Rosen. But there are questions of him. How much does he love the game? What type of leader is he really on and off the field? I mean, everybody has some questions, and I know those are a couple of questions about him. But I'm looking at on the field and throwing a ball. They all have had their big moments of throwing the ball, and they all, because we've talked about Rosen and Allen and Darnold the most, they've also been a bit disappointing as well this year.
Yeah.
Sometimes more disappointing than we thought they were going to be. But every now and then when they make those throws, they all throw the ball really well. I think the best thrower, I do believe, is Rosen.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.